Hey everyone, Tim Schofield here. It's time to do my full review on Motorola's latest flagship, the Edge Plus. It is called the Edge Plus because the edges are very curved. The screen really does curve around the edges of the phone, and it has been a little while since Motorola made a flagship, so I'm excited to share my experience with the Edge Plus. Right away, you can only get one model, the 256 gigabytes of base storage and 12 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM. So two top tier specs for a flagship. And again, this does price at $1,000, so that $1,000 price point for a flagship phone. However, a downside is that you can only get it at Verizon. So keep that price point in mind throughout this review, and with that high amount of storage and a lot of RAM, you're probably going to want to hold on to the Edge Plus for a while. And Motorola did come out and say that they will be providing at least 2 major Android updates in the future, so just kind of keep that in mind. So with all of that being said, let's dive into the full review of the Motorola Edge Plus. To begin, let's start with design. Yes, the Motorola Edge Plus can stand on its own. Not like I would ever recommend doing that. So, first of all, it does have a 6.7-inch 1080p OLED display, HDR10 plus 90 hertz, which I've always had on. I highly recommend it. Now, when it comes to the 90 hertz, yes, it does make it smoother. The jump from 60 hertz to 90 hertz is more noticeable than 90 hertz to 120 hertz, but you can notice a difference in phones such as the Galaxy S20, which do have 120 hertz as opposed to just 90. Since the Edge Plus has the camera bump on one side of the phone, it does rock quite a bit if you're trying to use it on a flat surface. Overall, it's a very premium feeling and looking device. I think it looks very professional with this color scheme going on the back. On the right side, the power button has a lot of texture to it, so you can find it very easily. Now, there is a punch hole cut out in that front-facing camera. Hard to miss. The Edge Plus is a very curvy phone. Motorola is calling it the Endless Edge display, which in my opinion is aesthetically very pleasing. I think it's a very good-looking phone with the curved sides, especially when you're watching videos. The content just spills off of the sides. Now, with that being said, there are some downsides to having edges. First of all, the sides are fairly thin to hold on to that aren't part of the display. So what that means is your thumb is going to have to rest on the actual part of the display. So Motorola needs to have edge detection, and I find that edge detection just isn't all that great. I've found myself annoyed in multiple apps while using the phone with the edges on. However, I guess the way to combat that is that you can turn the edges off. So for example, if I'm in the Play Store, I can go ahead and swipe over and just turn off the edges for that app on a per app basis, which gives you a lot more real estate to hold onto the sides. And you can actually permanently disable the edges in some apps if you want to. That's all in settings. However, then you don't take advantage of the side. So there is a solution to the poor edge detection, but it is kind of a bummer that Motorola doesn't have better edge detection when you are in apps. Hopefully Motorola can improve upon that in a software update so you're not stuck just turning off the edges in a lot of apps. And you saw there is a lot of functionality to the edges. So I can swipe over right here. You can customize these shortcuts if you want to go to specific apps, maybe compose an email, turn off or on the edges, or of course, maybe you want to do a quick measurement. There's also a gesture you can enable with the edge. Let's say you're in an app, you want to swap to your previously used one, just double tap on the edge and you can quick swap back and forth between these two apps. You can also enable it where if you double tap the edge, it will turn off the sides, so you can have that on so you can quickly do that. So overall, it's great, but I mean, there are gestures to do this same action, so you might want to actually just have it where you double tap and the sides will turn off instead. But nice, Motorola is implementing a lot of features. The Edge also has some gaming features built in. We'll talk about that in just a second. However, the software experience has been good. It does have the latest version of Android, and Motorola just adds some useful features. So it's a fairly stock experience. However, you can do things such as personalize your phone with different styles, different fingerprint animations for unlocking it. There's different screenshots with 3 fingers, or you can maybe chop twice, turn on that flashlight, chop twice to turn on again, or twist to actually open up a specific camera app that you want. It just kind of depends on how you want to customize it, but they are very useful. I'm glad Motorola has included some of them, including that Moto display. There's also some edge lighting that looks really cool with these very strong edges. Something rare to see in a flagship nowadays, the headphone jack is in the Edge Plus. Nice of Motorola to include that. And if you are someone that consumes a lot of multimedia, videos, music, games, you're gonna be very happy with the sound quality out of the stereo speakers, one bottom firing, one up at the top. I've been very happy with them in terms of quality and how loud they get. Nice job, Motorola. Within the camera app, your standard photo and video. And speaking of video, if you jump into settings, you can actually take up to 6K video. However, it does not support 4K 60 in video shooting, which is kind of a bummer if you're looking for that some other flagships do have. And then when you go to other modes, it has that macro, that 108 megapixel shot that you can do, some spot color, which is kind of neat. So what you can do in spot color is kind of go ahead and tap and select the color you want to keep. So let's say we want red, and we can snap this picture. There we go. If we go into it, everything else is in black and white, but that color that we selected, you'll see there's a little bit of red in that plant, a little bit of red on that YouTube. So just a nice little feature within the camera. And in bright light, the camera does a really good job. I'm actually happy with a lot of the shots that came out of the rear camera, whether it's the standard lens, ultra wide angle lens, or the telephoto lens. There's even a night mode built in, which definitely brightens up a lot of the shots. It's sort of a long exposure where you just kind of have to sit there and not move. But as you can tell, it adds a lot more to the shot, especially in really dark situations. And my favorite shots that I actually got out of this camera were some of the macro shots. They turned out really good, extremely clear. I was able to get really close up. And finally, here's just a couple more shots around my apartment and then outside. I'm limited to the specific shots that I can actually take, but drop a comment, let me know what you think about the camera and how these shots turned out. On the performance side of things, with the Snapdragon 865, 12 gigs of RAM, you're not gonna run into any issues. Gaming has been great, heavy multitasking has been great. No issues with RAM management for me either, so nice job Motorola on that end. You could power through a ton of higher end games and not worry about it, and there's a lot of game features built in. And while a game is running in the background, here I am just swapping between some of the apps, snapping a couple pictures. Let's go back into the Play Store. As you can tell, still loaded up in the RAM. And if we go back to that game after opening up Reddit, it should still be running as it was. And speaking of those game features, you can have custom triggers on the top edges, which is really awesome for gameplay. Actually makes me enjoy mobile gaming a lot more. You can set it to whatever you want. You can actually customize an icon to hover over the button you want it to press. So if you are in a racing game, you could have it go left and right, or maybe you want it to go boost and brake. Or if you're playing a shooter, you could potentially have an aim down sights button and a trigger for shooting. So for me, I really like this addition to games. The Edge Plus has a large 5,000 milliamp hour battery, and I've been very happy with battery life. It has easily been able to get me through a full day. Sometimes I can even push it to a day and a half, and that's on heavy usage. Now, one thing about the good battery life is that it kind of charges a little bit slow. In comparison to other flagships, it charges at 18 watts, while other flagships are charging much faster than that. The Edge Plus has wireless charging built in at 15 watts and has power sharing. So you can go ahead and turn on power sharing and wirelessly charge other devices, maybe some wireless headphones, maybe even another phone. When you do pay such a high price point for a flagship device, you expect an IP rating out of it, that water resistance, that dust resistance, and the Edge Plus does not have that. Motorola does say they do have a water repellent design to protect against some light splashes, maybe some light rain, but that's about it. Kind of a bummer for such a high price point. The Edge Plus does have that full 5G compatibility, even with Verizon's ultra wideband, which does get some crazy high speeds. And walking around Chicago, going on a couple walks here and there, I did pick up some 5G, so that is nice to see. 5G isn't quite where it needs to be yet, but it is heading in the right direction. It will get there eventually. Now, I just want to give some final thoughts on the Edge Plus. Overall, I've enjoyed using this phone. I'm glad Motorola is back to making flagships. When you do compare it to other flagships, it has missed a couple checkboxes that you look for in a flagship, such as that IP rating, maybe a little bit higher refresh rate nowadays in that display, maybe a little bit faster charging. However, it does have a solid camera, great battery life. It has some awesome sound, including that headphone jack. And of course, you can only get this device on Verizon at the moment. So I hope Motorola overcomes that hump going forward in future flagship devices. So that's it for me. That's my full review on the Motorola Edge Plus. Drop a comment, let me know what you think. Be sure to click that subscribe button. A lot more content coming soon. As always, guys, thank you very much for watching.